Welcome to Millionaire University, you guys. It's always so fun when I get to talk to not only one, but two people, and I love working with power couples like yourself. So thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having
Thanks for
us.
having us. We appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, so you guys have a really interesting story, which in and of itself is the very reason that we're talking today. I love when I get a chance to talk to people who have very different, unconventional businesses, ways that they have found to bring in income for their families, for their lives. It's the thing that lights me up the most. So let's dive right into like your story, and then we'll just kind of dissect little pieces as we go. You guys are the voiceover couple, and it's really fascinating what you've done. So can you walk us through how you both got started in voiceover work and what led you to build the business together?
Sure. So it started a little bit with it started with me. I went to school for radio. It was kind of my track, journalism. I did some writing. Worked for a hip hop journalism site called allhiphop.com for some time. So like recording arts, things like that. I did music in high school. That was all like my path. I loved recording arts, anything with technology and music and all that kind of stuff. So once I got out of college, and I didn't finish college, unfortunately, but I was dating my wife, who was a much more better student than I am. She was already in college, and, she was doing musical theater. That was her minor outside of doing education. So once we got married, 2017, we got married in 2015, 2017 is when I started doing voiceover work on the side. And it really started with a suggestion from my mom about Fiverr. So my mom was like, hey, check out Fiverr. It's like a workplace marketplace. They have a voiceover division, and I know you have microphones and whatnot. Give it a try.
Yeah.
So having the ability to already, edit audio, I just created some demos for myself and put them on Fiverr and started to get booked a little bit, of course, with equipment that is not like the best at the time, but I knew how to clean up audio enough to make it sound decent. And then with Nicole having the musical theater piece, I ended up just teaching her how to do editing, and she already had the acting chops, and her voice itself is amazing. So we just combined it, and then I made the brand and the logo, and then fast forward, it was pretty much a side hustle at that point because I was doing telecom work, working for my dad's business, running cable, construction type stuff, and doing that on the side. 3 years later, we were making enough to pretty much be what we were making a year on Fiverr was comparable to what I was making at my construction job, which is about 60,000 at that time. And then my wife was like, the pandemic hit. We had a kid literally a week before the world shut down.
Yep.
And my wife, who always, kind of desired to be a stay-at-home mom, kind of looked at me and said, hey, we see it's a viable business. Your job is slowed down. Why don't you stay home and build the business, and I'll hold the benefits down. And she was working at University of Delaware at the time, which is, she made the call and put the battery in my back to build the business. And I went full time in 2021.
Wow, that's so amazing. And I appreciate you sharing the numbers too. I know a lot of times people want to hear like, okay, well, at what point for you was that realistic? Like what was the income that needed to be replaced? And so I love it. I think it's so incredible that these are the best businesses, in my opinion. The ones that just kind of come when you're like, oh, I could dabble in that. The side hustle
Right.
turns into the full-time thing where you find something that's really fun and that you're really passionate about. So I want to know, and I know this is something I'd probably ask a little later in the conversation, but I'm really curious to know this now. Is Fiverr still a pretty viable place for people to get started if they wanted to do a business like yours, if they feel like they have that skill set? Or is there somewhere else you'd even recommend that you've been doing it a while for people to really launch themselves with this kind of a business?
Yeah, Nicole can speak to that because she's still very prevalent on Fiverr.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's a very valuable place for people to look for work in all kinds of different lanes, not even just voiceover, but editing or whatever.
So Fiverr
Yeah.
has
So it's kind of like,
Fiverr has grown
Sorry.
a lot. Even since we've gotten there, it's like changed. It's also now they're adding a lot of different components to it, and but I will say that within the voiceover community, we learned once we got into the actual voiceover community and started, having mentors and meeting people that were already doing big stuff. Fiverr is like it's a love-hate thing within the voiceover community because there's so many people on voices on not voices but Fiverr that are charging very little, to be voiceover artists, which can overall hurt the overall industry or the economy of voiceover. But at the end of the day, we had to learn what we should be charging and just make sure it was comparable to what so it doesn't hurt the overall voiceover industry. But in this day and age, you kind of got to get work where you can. So, I think at the end of the day, as long as we're having good best practices and things of that nature, we'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of like other industries too, where you kind of have to start in the marketplaces where people are actually looking for the work before you've built a name for yourself.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, I've had some guests on here who sell on like Etsy or Amazon, and then eventually over time they brand themselves, create a whole line, and then they're selling, privately on Shopify. So it's probably the same thing. There's so much benefit in just getting out there, getting the work, building a name for yourself, having the testimonials, getting the work experience, and then you don't know what you don't know when you get started. So that's good to hear. It's still a really good, viable place.
Yes.
And it's probably, like you kind of mentioned, a race to the bottom with pricing sometimes.
Sometimes.
But you can kind of overcome that, right? The more you're just putting out the work and the more you're getting those high reviews. Any other things you'd add on, like if we're wanting to start there on Fiverr, my husband's even recommended that to me. I love doing, obviously, I use my voice all the time. And I've wondered that too, like, okay, well, it feels really saturated. It feels like there's a ton of people on there doing work like this. But any recommendations on how to really stand out when you're getting started on platforms like Fiverr?
I think a lot of it has to do with, now I think it more so has to do with how you make your site look. Now, of course, your site can look great. You can have all the videos, you can have all the bells and whistles. But I mean, really, when you're first starting out with no voiceover work under your belt, it's kind of one of those things where you just need to make your demo sound as good as possible. Take the time I tell people to take the time to do that. The courses, when we do consultations for people who want to get into voiceover, and the one thing we do is give them resources to coaching, to even free, groups and Facebook groups and communities that they can get into, because that's really what changed the game for us.
Yeah.
Outside of having the voices was meeting people and getting the information. It really was in the 2020 we did a virtual conference called the Vocation Conference, and that's really what changed our lives. So I tell people to before you put a bunch of money into editing training, put a bunch of money into a bunch of stuff, get into the community so you can understand and ask a lot of questions, because people in the voiceover community are very caring,
very welcoming,
and they share information very well. So I always tell people to just get in there, get the training. That way, when you go to do the demos and all that kind of stuff, then it can sound better. Now Fiverr is one of those things where people have to come to you. It's not the same as other sites. Like, we're also on sites called voices.com where we audition daily for things that are posted. But Fiverr is a site where people have to come to you more than anything. So, don't get discouraged, because Fiverr can take a minute to kind of ramp up. Yeah. But just try to get the quality where it needs to be, and try to make sure that on Fiverr everything is laid out well so that people can read and understand what they're getting.
And know exactly what to offer.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And with that being said, when you said what to offer, like, is it just, did you guys go and do research to see what other people were doing as far as demos, or where would somebody even begin with knowing, like, okay, I like this, I have a great voice, and I feel like this would be something I'd be really good at? Did you like niche down initially to know what type of voiceover work you wanted to do, or did you do any research, or was it just like, we'll just start putting out some random samples and see what people are looking for? What is that process like?
So I just put out random samples. As somebody who's always been in the entertainment type of thing, I kind of just I knew I did like a radio sample. I did like a fake radio DJ sample. I did like a fake event. I just kind of used generic stuff. So like I used a fake commercial for like a product. I went online and found sample scripts. So I went on you can find thousands of voiceover sample scripts.
AI will make your scripts for you.
ChatGPT will literally do it now. But at the time, I just looked up scripts, and I knew how to edit and layer audio. So I, did whatever commercially voice I thought was cool at the time, and then added music behind it, and did like 30-second ones, and then I just did them in different tones. So whenever you're doing a demo, you want to show different tones or show your range. So whether it's, a really cool, commercially voiceover, or something that's more serious PSA, you just want to show a range that you can do different things. I think we started out with commercial. Of course, narration is something that we like to do, but voiceover has so many different genres that you can make money in. I mean, we do e-learning, narration, commercial, promo work, anything from that to what else is good? What do you think? IVR, phone.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways to get into it. It all depends on what fits your personal voice. Some people sound
Yeah.
like the movie phone guy.
Like, I know that
You know what I mean?
e-learning is one of my strong
Yeah.
points because I was a teacher
Yep.
for a long time. So
Mm.
I think that it kind of naturally, comes out of me and it makes the most sense. So one of my samples may be an e-learning sample so that clients can see, okay, her voice would sound good on this.
Yeah. Go to your strengths is what I would say.
Right.
Because she has a very warm, soothing female voice. So we went right toward the one stuff that sounds like a mother.
It's a lower
where
register.
it sounds like a teacher, right?
And all of this, I mean, I know you guys had this background in like theater and media a little bit. Was that a lot of this? Have you just learned as you got in there and you're like, okay, this is a thing. Like there's a whole genre or there's a whole niche here just for certain registers of voice, or like understanding how to play to your strengths. Did you even know e-learning was a thing? Did you know all of these different branches of voiceover work existed when you started and you just kind of dabbled and found the thing that fit you the best?
We learned as we went along,
Yeah.
honestly.
I knew
Yeah.
some of it was there. I knew some of but I didn't know until my mom made a suggestion that I could get into voiceover work from the internet. In my mind, it was something that almost just like SAG actors, like you kind of have to go get into a casting agency and maybe you had to go to a studio. But
Right.
the pandemic changed a lot of that. Now,
More accessible.
yeah, and it made it so all voiceover actors who were even working had to have a home studio. So that kind of became the norm, especially after 2020.
Yeah.
And what also helped us was we got into the VO industry at a time before it got super saturated. And also it was a big time for diversity. So as African-American actors, we kind of came into a time during the pandemic where they were, with Black Lives Matter and everything that were going on, they were doing a lot of work specifically towards African-American targeted stuff. So that was helpful in getting in. And it wasn't okay anymore to cast voices that don't match the description. So they stopped doing that only like 4 or 5 years ago. But,
Wow.
now they have to,
Which is wild.
It is wild, but yeah.
Yeah.
But that was helpful
That's
for
so
building our
weird.
business.
That's amazing. Okay. So many questions. I'm like, I've told people before, it's a dangerous seat that I sit in sometimes because I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm starting tomorrow. Like voiceover acting, here we come. No, I really am so fascinated. I have a theater background as well. And I love stuff like this. And I think it's so intriguing to hear all of the different avenues. And my curiosity too, as somebody who runs a podcast all about making money and how to create wealth, is if you're in this industry, like you're part of this, what is like the golden goose everybody goes after? Like, is there one specific type of voice acting or one thing that's like, oh, that's the one that pays the most? Like, that's what we're all kind of striving. If you can get that job, you're golden. Or is it just you're kind of only as good as your next job?
It's kind of a little bit of all of that. It's funny. It's kind of you're only good as your next job.
Yeah.
Man, especially this year, it's an interesting question you ask because it's like, so everybody wants to go for commercial. I think the first thing you think of is TV, hearing your voice on a national TV commercial or becoming the voice brand of a certain brand. So like a lady we know, Karen Girlfrey, she's the overall like voice for CVS. So that means they have some type of contract with her where she does a lot of their stuff and she's the overall brand voice. I think that in a way is almost a golden goose.
Yeah.
If you can get a job where you're like the brand voice and they just are paying you almost like an employee, or they just have work for you constantly and they want to use you for everything, whether it's their phone, whether it's their overall like what you hear, that's beautiful because that's like reoccurring work. Of course, the way you get paid in voiceover is usually broken down into labor and usage and licensing. So that can be all over the place. Commercial jobs always, the ones that are on national television pay the most. So you could do literally a 30-second spot that maybe takes you a 2-hour session to record, and that job may pay $5,000 to $10,000 just off of the licensing fee, based off of what they are going to be using it for. So the more people that are going to see it, the more faces in front of, whether it be streaming, socials, and however many years they're going to use that is how you get paid.
They could come back around, and without you even having to repeat the work,
Right.
you get paid again because they're using it again.
Right. If you have a commercial that you recorded a year ago and it's doing well, and that contract goes away, and they just say, "Hey, it's been good for our company," they'll just renew the contract.
I think about the Burger King guy, the BK Have It Your Way. Like I think about him, and I think about like how that is almost like a golden goose right there.
Yeah, you hear it all the time. But it can also be treacherous because you got to be careful about what contract you sign. you sign the wrong contract and you be listening to your voice for 10 years and not getting paid for it anymore because you signed the wrong or in perpetuity contract. So, but I know even now the newest thing has been AI creation. So that's like the new golden goose is now there's all these AI companies offering thousands of dollars to basically create a voice, which can destroy your business if you're not careful, because you're giving your voice over to somebody to possibly make money off your voice for forever.
What do people need to be aware of with that? With it's going to be happening, so how do you protect yourself?
So interesting enough, I just went through that in this past summertime with a big job a big AI job I just did, which I'm not allowed to talk too much about. I can't spill the beans because I'm under a lot of NDAs. But it's basically I had to negotiate this contract with a major company for a smart speaker that I will be using. I will be one of the African American voices on.
Cool.
So I can't really confirm or deny who that is or what that is because I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it took a month just to negotiate that contract because what they were asking for was a lot. They were asking for a ton for like. I think the first ask they gave me was like, use my voice in perpetuity for $40,000. And it was just like, what? You know what I mean? Like, like I know you guys that will give you guys the ability to create commercials for my voice, to do different things. So we ended up negotiating for over a month and coming to like a yearly contract for them to use my voice. And I just kind of had to play hardball, you know what I mean? And not be intimidated by who they were and all that kind of stuff, because that's what I would tell people is like, don't be afraid to say no if you're not comfortable with it. Because in voiceover, once you sign a contract, and if it's in perpetuity, you could be hampering your business or your ability to get business for the foreseeable future. So yeah, just read, be careful of the word in perpetuity. Anything with that word that we normally stray away from. The only thing we give in perpetuity for is like internal work. So sometimes we do jobs that don't ever really see the light of day, or it's just for internal uses at the company, like an employee video or something like that. We'll give that in perpetuity because it's not public facing at all. But yeah, stay away from in perpetuity and be careful of these tech companies that are offering. They even offer, $10,000 is not a little bit of money, so somebody could say, hey, just create this voice for $10,000. And what's crazy is in 2018 or 19, when we first got on Fiverr, there was Chinese companies already reaching out about AI way before any of these companies in America started really ramping it up. There was Chinese companies offering like 0.101 per, like a fraction of a penny per word to record all these words and create AI. And we just turned them down left and right because we were like, we don't know what this is. Yeah. But now we're not comfortable with it.
Yeah, smart. Good thing you did. And I think just to give context too for everybody, like when you really think about that, perpetuity with your voice is, and when it becomes an AI feature, I think it's so brilliant that you negotiated annual, because there's no end to what they can continue to monetize using that voice.
No end.
Right? Like right now, it's, yes, you'd have to re-record things up until AI, and now it's like they just kind of own it. And maybe something you're even alluding to with being careful, the contracts you take too, beyond just the phrasing and everything in there with perpetuity, but like if your voice is being leveraged in a very big, well-known company, does that affect and can impact you getting other jobs? Because they're like, oh, we're already associated with that, or that could end poorly, and so we don't want to use the same voice. Like there's a lot to consider, right? With like being really careful who you work with.
Yep. And some jobs, some contracts have exclusivity too. So some jobs will say, hey, we pay you for this. You also cannot work in these categories of voiceover for this amount of time. So, it all depends. They don't always want you competing. They don't want your voice competing with another voice. And that's usually like bigger contracts. So if you're like the campaign voice or the main voice of something, and you're going to get, and that's okay. Exclusivity is great. But whenever you get exclusivity, it means the price needs to go up, because they're literally taking away areas that you can make money.
Yep. So amazing. Okay. I want to know more about the transition you guys had from, you got your start on Fiverr. You actually did decently well, just getting started. You had really great timing. I never like to call it luck, because luck is really just opportunity meeting preparation, right? Like the timing was right, but you were prepared to jump on it. Right. So what was that transition now that you guys have your own personal brand, you use other services, other sites, and then even the transition into, I'm wondering if you have an agent, what that has looked like, and when you knew it was time to kind of start playing in the big leagues? And just tell us a little more about the journey of that.
Yeah.
So I think it really started, like I said, I think 2020 is when we were like, okay, we're making a decent amount of money off our first side hustle. My job had slowed down. We started doing some, taking time to build the business online. We went to that conference and I think that conference really was the game changer.
Yeah, that put
for
the battery in
us.
our back.
Yeah, it was like a weekend full of just Zoom but it was very like, it was a lot of people on there. There was breakout sessions. There was experts. And the biggest part of it was meeting people and just letting our personalities, we're very sociable people. So we're big on connecting and networking. And that's really a big part of VO is just getting out there and talking to people, getting to know people, finding people in the community that can help you. And we had a friend named Gina Scarpa, who is a very well-known voiceover artist now. And she was our mentor. And she basically just shared information. We got on the phone with her, showed us the ropes. People looked at my website and said, this is what needs to change. We literally had like a breakout session where everybody shared their screen one at a time and people gave, feedback on their website. So I think once we got into that, we knew once we started to having opportunities to get more work, it was time to transition. I think we went from Fiverr and then we got on, was it either voices.com or Voices123. We got onto those 3 sites and we started to actually get work. And then I booked my first, I guess, 5-figure job with Yahoo Sportsbook. And then from that, I pretty much, we created this. We ripped out our walk-in closet and got it sound treated and just invested at least a couple $1,000s into the microphone and to all the equipment. And then we were able to start getting, once we had some actual work under our belt, the Yahoo job, Nicole was booking some work. We actually used that to redo our demos with real work that we had actually, created. So we made sure we got the stuff from our clients
Like
and
finished work
and made the demos out of that. And then we were able to, who connected us to, so one of our agents, Celia Siegel.
Yeah, CSM and
CSM.
shout out to them.
Shout out to her. I actually randomly just found her website from somebody else's, another well-known Instagram voiceover named Stephen Johnson. He's like the food guy. So I found I saw who was representing him, went to her site, and she had free 15-minute calls on her, consultation calls. Just, and so I just booked a consultation call, sent her, just took a chance. I'm big on that. And my wife always jokes, I've just always been that guy. Like, I will walk up to somebody at the airport if I, you know what I mean? If I feel like it's a good opportunity. So that call really was great. She saw our work. She saw our website, our brand. She loved the fact that we were a couple, which is different. There's not a lot of voiceover couple brands in the industry. And so she signed us to CSM and then also gave me other agencies that we should reach out to. So we submitted to a bunch. And so now we're represented by about 4. We're represented by CSM, AB2 Talent out of LA, Wayman Agency in Minnesota, and the one you just got in both years out of Oregon. And the Sunspots in Florida as well.
Yeah.
So
Is that pretty normal to have multiple representation? Like, okay.
Yeah.
We get to work with people internationally too. We work with people in Brazil.
Yeah.
We have clients that are in Sweden.
Yeah.
Like, we get a lot of different.
So really the income comes from a lot of places. Once you build the brand, I mean, we have direct agencies we work with that just email us like, hey, we got this. Can you give us a sample for this? And then we have work that we get from our agents. A lot of the stuff from the agents is the big stuff, like the commercials with the casting agencies that they get from the actual big clients. So most of the big work for commercials go through casting agencies and whatnot. But a lot of our smaller work that keeps our business going, the mom and pop stores, the narration, all the smaller work is really what keeps our business going. And that can come from the pay-to-play sites, direct clients that we keep relationships with, and as well as our agents. So we try to get it from all
I have so many more questions. I love it. So cool. So I want to ask, this is kind of an interesting question. I think in entrepreneurship, we have an asset, we have a skill, right? And sometimes it's really hard. I've especially been experiencing this where you can leverage that skill in a variety of ways. You guys just kind of mentioned you have your smaller clients. Sometimes those are the lifeblood, and then you have those big projects that will come along. When you have that one asset, try and help me work through this to even explain to our listeners where you're able to charge like $10,000, $50,000 for a high ticket client, but then you're also maybe doing a couple $1,000s for something smaller. How do you like manage that in your mind where you're like, okay, if this is the asset, first of all, why would I be willing to leverage this for only a few thousand when I can charge this much? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, because I think sometimes it can be tricky where you value that so much that you're willing to get paid this, but then also kind of how do you balance that out?
A lot of it comes with gauging who the client is. So, if a mom and pop local business comes to me and says, hey, we want a voiceover for our Facebook ads, you know what I mean? We use a site called gvaa.com or .org, and that's the Global Voice Acting Academy. And what that does have on there is a rate guide. So it's actually a starting point that we use for negotiations when we're negotiating like licensing. And it actually will give you breakdown depending on what you're using it for. So it has a national TV section, a narration, animation. It has you can go to every category and see what you should be charging or what industry standards are. But not everybody has that budget. Everybody says, well, our budget is this for this, or our budget is that. And then we just have to kind of make a decision whether we're willing to do the job for that. If it's only being used for social media, a lot of times, like, we may do a 30-second voiceover for a local hair salon in where we live in Delaware, and that might cost a business owner $300 to $400 because they're only going to put it on their socials. They're only trying to get local business. They're not running it on TV, as opposed to if we do that with an agency, that's maybe showing it regionally, and it's going to be more. So we do sometimes help and cut deals, depending on the person, and we talk to them.
Comes down to relationship.
Yeah. It comes down to relationship, and there's sometimes, it's just not reasonable. Like, we can't do a 2-hour live session and do 90-minute voiceover for $100. You know what I mean? It's just not reasonable but I think that, the bigger companies, they always have set terms normally, and they show us, when we get auditions, we get the audition, the specs of the audition, and then we get the rates. And sometimes the agent will say, hey, this isn't really, up to standard, so you make a decision whether you want to pass on it or not. But, it depends. We kind of make judgment calls based on what's being asked. But we want to work with smaller businesses, and we want to work with, so a lot of times we try to make that a point to let the small businesses know, like, hey, you may see us post things with big companies, but don't be afraid to reach out because we can tailor things that'll fit to your business.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess that's even part of the question too, is the asset doesn't really change. Like, it's your voice, right? It's not like you're going to give a worse voice to the person who's paying a few $100s. So
100%.
it's even kind of it's like timing, output. So, and maybe just like everything all comes out in the wash, where because you're able to take these big clients, it also gives you the space to be able to take some of these smaller jobs as well. Do you feel like it takes a different amount of time? Like, I think sometimes that's the crazy thing when you start making in the tens of thousands of dollars and you're looking at like, this really didn't take me much more time to make that kind of money. But the only reason I was able to do that is because of all the work that I've done. So does it usually typically take about the same amount of time to do something that's obviously maybe different from the AI voice? That's probably a lot more time.
Yeah.
But how does that balance itself out?
I think it
Depends.
Yeah, it depends. It kind of depends on the person. So I find it that working with bigger companies is easier, even though it's more money, because, like, for instance, we have a program called Source Connect. So a lot of big jobs, if I do a job for like Pepsi or Coke, they're going to hire a production house that is going to patch into my system through this program, and I get to just sit here and record the script, and they actually have an engineer that's recording. Now, sometimes and editing. So sometimes I just have to say the stuff, listen to the director, and they handle it. Sometimes I have to self-record and edit myself and send it off, which is fine too. I find usually there's more work with smaller clients just because you're dealing with people who don't know anything about the industry, or maybe can be very particular, or want you to go back and do this and do that. So a lot of times with bigger companies, it's a directed session with a director who's telling you live, say this, and it sounds like this. So normally you can get what they want in a quicker time than if I have a client that is a mom and pop store owner who I'm sending it back and forth, like, hey, here's this take. How do you like it? What do you want different?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it can be more time consuming, But I mean, at the end of the day, of course, the big stuff in dealing with production houses is always nice because it's quick, easy, and they handle a lot of the work. But I mean, I'm okay. I'm grateful for the fact that we can make money from our voice. So not having a lot of overhead as a business, kind of outside of our equipment, outside of like
Or
purchasing that stuff,
subscriptions, maybe.
for subscriptions. We don't have a storefront. We don't have a lot of expenses outside of keeping up what we currently have. So we try to gauge that as well as being generous in some ways because we do want to create. So sometimes risk reward. You give discounts or you help somebody in hopes of getting more work in the future.
Yeah. I think there's always a win in everything that we do, right? I love that you mentioned, like, I'll talk to somebody in an airport. Like, I think
Right.
as human beings, sometimes we always want to know what we're going to get before we're willing to give. And we always want to make sure that there's a good ROI. And especially as entrepreneurs, that can be a really easy trap to fall into. And the more I think we lean into just the connection value and the willingness to serve, then a lot of times it's that willingness and that energy that you're putting out that's actually going to call in some of those bigger jobs. So I love that. I think it's cool that you guys aren't just like, well, we've had these big jobs, so like we're going to cut off all the smaller stuff because now
Right.
we have gotten to a point where we don't need those. And that's really just a matter of choice, right? Like I'm sure there's people who go both directions. They stay with the smaller and they love doing a lot of them. People who
Yep.
do the bigger jobs and that's all they do. And I love that you have that freedom when you have your own thing that you can choose where you want to spend your energy and your time. So it's really
Yeah.
cool to hear what you
That's
guys
one
have
of the
done.
reasons. One of the reasons why I'm still on Fiverr is because I still want to be able to be accessible to everyone, not just, bigger companies, but, your small mom and pop shops, things like that.
And there's big companies lurking
Yeah.
on Fiverr.
Yeah, there are big companies lurking on Fiverr.
I mean, the first
Wow.
Nike job the first Nike case study I did was off of Fiverr.
Wow.
So Nicole's gotten a couple of big clients
I
off
have.
of Fiverr. So
I have.
it's definitely a site that is making noise. I mean, they have Super Bowl commercials. The companies know about them, and companies are using them because there's a lot of different things going on, especially within the SAG acting space, that are making things different. So we're non-union actors right now. There's a chance we could be union in the future. Most likely will be FICOR, which is like union, allowed to do union work, but still considered non-union for voting purposes.
Not favorable, but
Yeah, not favorable to the union, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we have too much non-union work to kind of give that up.
right.
Yeah.
So that's the other side of it too.
Cool. All right. So I think there's two pieces to this question. A lot of people love to know what it's like when you're working together as a couple. You guys have gone full time building this business together. And then also on the front end, I know you started to mention like this is unique. There's not a lot of voiceover couples. So I want to know the behind the scenes story of what it's like working together, how you guys have navigated that, and then even front end branding. Do you guys do a lot of jobs together, or how does that make you stand out in the marketplace? So two pieces to that question.
So working together has been good. I think in the beginning, of course, you have your bumps and your getting to, just having that dynamic. I'm like my dad. My dad was a business owner too, and he was really hard on me at times. But I can be like, just very particular as a creative about what I want. So a lot of time is finding that balance when working with each other. But I think we've found that balance. I think one thing is after we'll be 10 years married this year, which is cool, is that we've learned to try to appreciate each other's differences and strengths. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm an ADHD creative who can start 7 things but needs probably direction to finish, one of them. And my wife is more of the type A, personality. She's the master's degree, person. And, but we both have a lot of different strengths and assets that we use to help each other. We don't get to do a lot of together work as much. There's times that we get to audition and people will say, hey, can you both, if you get like a mom and dad dialogue or
Right.
things like that.
It's rare. I think we worked on like a political spot before.
Yeah, that's right. We did a political spot.
I really enjoy beating him out on some of the auditions
Yes.
that we did when they're like, hey, we want to give this to you and your husband and see, what voice we want.
But we don't know if we want a male or female. So anytime they have sent me an audition and say, hey, can we get a sample from you and your wife? She beats me every time. It's just, it's just
Girl
there's
power.
something about the female voice is way more sought after. Nobody wants to hear a man speak all the time like that. Rather listen to a beautiful woman speak. than me. So she beats me out every time on that. I think she's like 4-0 on that.
It's enjoyable.
That's
It's
so
all
funny.
good though. But I mean, it has helped our brand. One thing we have heard from clients specifically was something about the family brand gives them a feeling of comfort,
Security.
And trustworthiness. And that was the first time I had heard that from a client, which was interesting because they basically just like, if I can't get a hold of you, I know I can get a hold of your wife. They can get us on the phone. They can even text us. We just pride ourselves on being available. Where, we're still, in our, mid to late 30s and trying to get as much money as we can. So, hey, if you want to call me at 2 o'clock in the morning and you need a voiceover, I'm going to charge you extra for making me get out the bed, but I'm going to get out the bed, kind of thing. So we
Which
just,
has happened before.
it's happened.
It's happened.
But, I think the family brand thing has worked out because they like seeing that. They like seeing a young family. My 5-year-old did his first ever voiceover last year. So we get, we're getting our kids into it. So I think we're going to at some point maybe try to like do the voiceover family if he wants to continue into it. So it's kind of one of those things where it just worked out. It gave people, I knew that it wasn't something that when I looked out or I Googled voiceover artists that I saw a lot of. There's maybe like 2 other couples I've seen that are doing voiceover together. And there was none that were African Americans. So I just thought it just sounded like it was unique, I think, at the end of the day. What was the other piece to your question? I think I missed one piece.
You got them, like kind of working together what the dynamic is with you guys. I would love to hear Nicole's, if she has anything else to add to that too, because I know the female might feel a little differently about the collaboration.
It really, I think it was really hard for me to accept feedback. I think working with your spouse, that's something that is already hard. You're like working with them and you're married to them. And so I think accepting feedback was hard for me to receive that from Dom. Sometimes it wouldn't always be the most gentle, but, because he's very particular. But I think it's really cool because I get to be coached by him and directed by him. I think me being like an on-stage actor, I have some strengths that he may not have. He has more of he's able to really hone into, how I'm acting and how
yeah, like hone in like what the tone needs to be.
Yeah, what the tone exactly, what the tone needs to be exactly. So, it's difficult sometimes working with your spouse, but I mean it's rewarding at the same time because we're building a legacy together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This year, that's been more of means more than ever because, I think in the last 2 years, my wife has been going through some really tough, like, mental health challenges after postpartum that really, like, took her out of the studio for a while. I mean,
I couldn't even read.
She was she went from a master's degree, who was holding down a university job to somebody who was having problems even cognitively being able to get out of bed. So this year alone, I think brought us a lot closer. This last 2 years brought us a lot closer just as a couple because I had to kind of pick up the slack everywhere as well as help get her back to being able to record again. Yeah. Now within the last 4 months, she's now finally back into being in the studio more often. But there's that piece to it too. When you work together, you go through life stuff together and you also have to figure out how to pivot, when stuff changes.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that you're doing better. I know those can be really, really hard, dark times to come out of. And that is one of the hard things about working together and having to navigate the personal stuff. I know my husband and I have gone through really hard personal struggles. And one of the best pieces of advice we heard, but it's not really practical, is when you have a business partnership, let one continue to take over the business while the other handles whatever the chaos is. But when you're married, you really can't separate that because you're so enmeshed in everything.
Exactly.
And so props to you guys, because to keep a business going and keep things afloat and keep a marriage afloat at the same time when you have so much emotional stuff happening is no small job. So I'm impressed you guys are sitting here today. Applaud you for making it through that. And I was going to ask before, and 2 kids, throw in a parakeet or something too, right? Like partridge in a pear tree. No big deal. No big deal. Man, it is seriously, especially in the world we're living in right now, there's a lot against us. And so any entrepreneur, let alone an entrepreneur couple who's able to make it in the face of all of the obstacles is just amazing. And so that's why we have guests like you on the show, because it's inspiring and it's good to hear we're not all building these businesses in a vacuum where the circumstances are perfect or we have it all figured out. We're all figuring it out as we go. And I love hearing how you guys have navigated that and just continue. It sounds like it's just one step in front of the other, or one foot in front of the other, next step, next right thing.
Yep.
Which I don't know about you, but I think that's entrepreneurship,
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
In
That is
the
100%.
simplest of terms.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I have two more questions. Well, at least two more questions, but I was going to ask, we know a little bit about the history, we know a lot about you guys now. What's the future for you guys? What's the vision? What's the dream? And where do you see this going, like down the line, as you guys continue to hone in on this talent and build this brand together?
I think we really want to give back. I think a part of why we do what we do is so that we can be representation for other Black and brown voices, or just any other voices that need to be heard. I think it's important to bridge the gap with literacy with kids. Me being a teacher, it was really important for me to, make sure that we value literacy, and that we put that at the forefront of what we're doing, so that kids can learn how to read, so that they can get into voiceover and it can be more accessible to them. So I think more than anything, we want kids to have a seat at the table. We want them to be able to have access to voiceover like they've never, have known before. I think it's important. Kids, they want to be rappers. They want to be, they have the equipment. Maybe they have it at home and they don't know really how to use it, or, how to use it in terms of voiceover. And maybe they don't know that that's an actual lane for them to actually be a part of. So I think just exposing them to the craft and really helping them see the value in it, and, that you can make money at home. Is really important for us to just build the generational wealth.
So yeah, that's the piece we're really been pushing towards next. Is we did a couple of test summer courses a couple of years ago with the Boys and Girls Club in Delaware. It was like a 5-week voiceover course. We went in there like an hour a week, and it literally, I started like the first week, I just started by showing the kids, videos of our work. That always draws them in when they see like a real commercial you're on. And they have no clue that they could even get into that type of business. And then from there, it was actually having them record, and they worked in groups, and they picked what type of, voiceover they wanted to do. So really, it's been like partnering with different nonprofit organizations where there's underserved youth, and providing voiceover courses for them just to expose them to it, have them play around with the microphone, have them, and also a big part of it is teaching them not to be mindless consumers. So one big piece of this is like, hey, when you guys listen to a McDonald's commercial, why does the voice sound like it does?
It's targeting.
Why does the music sound like it does?
Right.
Why does it make you hungry? Why does this toy commercial make you want to go talk to your mom? Why does this sad PSA where they're showing you all the dogs crying in the cages make you feel sad? There's a reason that they give these tones, that they tell you these are all everything from the music, the visuals, the script is all created to manipulate you to feel a certain way, whether you consider it bad, good, or bad. So even if they're not going to be voiceover artists, at least they'll be smarter consumers. At least they'll be able to listen to an advertisement and deduct what's happening from what they're listening to, not just say, oh, I feel like I want to go get this. Well, why do you want to go get that? And why, and that way that makes them think about marketing different. So maybe if they don't get into voiceover, well, they get into marketing because now, hey, I just want to craft things that make people go get it, So I think more of it is just, giving time to kids and give them another option and let them dream a little bit. Even if they don't want to be in front of the camera, you can be behind the mic and like my wife said, out in the hood, there's a bunch of kids that got recording equipment because they all want to be music artists, and they teach themselves to record and edit themselves and put it out online. So, I mean, honestly, the biggest curve in voiceover, when people call me to do consultations, you can have the greatest voice in the world, but if you can't edit audio, you can't send an audition in. So if these kids can already edit audio, well, shoot, you're already ahead of the curve, to be honest with you. You can go make a Fiverr account, or you can get your parents to find places for you to hone that craft. And a lot of these kids just don't know they can do it. There's a ton of kids in voiceover. Yeah. There's a ton of kids making a lot of money in voiceover, but more times than not, it's privileged kids with parents that know to go find them those opportunities.
So cool. I love it. I love that your mission is so much bigger even than just the work, and that you're finding gaps that you guys can fulfill that can continue to keep the industry thriving and represented and all of the things. So such a cool intersection of your talent and the needs, and I love it. There's just so many layers to that. It's beautiful.
Faith is a big part of it too. I think, just as Christians, like, we're grateful that we're even be able to even have this as a job. Like, just to be a dad that can stay home with my kids and spend time with my kids. So I just think I'm compelled to give back. Like, there's no way I can just make money with my voice and not figure out a way to help people. It just makes no sense. You know what I mean? In my brain, at least, it's just like, to have the privilege to even do this is like, amazing in my mind.
I'm so glad you added that. That's so powerful. So the question, I know I'm familiar with you guys. You've mentioned a couple of really cool jobs. I want to know from you personally, it may not even be the one that we might think is the coolest, but what has been your favorite, most excited that you can talk about, that you've just been like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like, I've arrived, or this is the coolest thing ever for each of you?
I think I'll go first. Okay, so I think what was her name? Sister Esther? Sister Ethel?
Oh, Sister Ethel.
I think one of my favorite jobs is working on an animation. So I got to be this old lady at a church, and I got to have my old lady voice on and everything like that, and it was just so cool to see my voice with the animation. I think that really did something, in me of like, oh, I really want to become, I'm going to do animation work. I have a vision of being a bird. That's like one of my goals is like, I want to be a bird animation, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's
cute.
I mean, especially that being her first animation, it was like, it required more acting, which is like more, especially in her lane. So,
Cool.
her, and it was cool because it was for a real cartoon. It was for
Pure Flix.
Pure Flix, which is like a Christian version of Netflix. So they have like a show on there, and she got to play like an old church lady role, which was really cool. So
That's
I
so
think
fun.
I would say for me, that's tough.
Your favorite?
I love any of the sports one. I'm a
Right,
sports
Steve?
guy. So right now I have a commercial that runs now on online on TV called for Prize Picks, which is the sports betting app. So if you ever see on ESPN the one with, like, I think it's Joe Budden and another guy named Drewski, I'm the voice at the end of that. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. That one. So I like that one. But I would say my favorites are the ones I get to do for sports teams. I think I've done a couple narrations for like the Cincinnati Bengals. I did their hype video for the playoffs a couple years ago. I've been able to do some stuff for the NHL. This past season, I was the voice for the NFL for their international partner, DAZN. So that was fun. I got to do. So I think anything dealing with sports is like, that's where it is for me. Because as a guy who played football and baseball, and I'm just a sports person, so I can almost do those stuff effortlessly because I get it. I coach my kids' teams. Like, I can find that motivational voice when I need to.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I love that you both are able to align your passions and your background with work that you absolutely love. So I hope you keep getting more of those jobs that light you up the most. And I love that you will continue to use your gift in a variety of ways. I think it's so inspiring, so cool. I love hearing what you guys have built and how another unique lane, that's something I hope somebody listening has never really considered this and is now going to look into it. So if they want to learn from you guys, if they want to keep following along with your journey, where's the best place for them to connect with you off the podcast?
They can go to www.thevoiceovercouple.com. We have a tab there for anybody who's interested in getting voiceover work, and they just need to fill out the form, and we will get right back to them, and we can usually book a time to get on Zoom to talk. And each consultation session, we can't guarantee, a foot into the industry, but what we can do is give them the information on, affordable equipment they can start out with. We always, at the end of every meeting, I have a sheet that has links to affordable equipment to Amazon, that has links to resources online, communities they should go join, even editing, coaching. Well, no, actual editing. Like, we have other voiceover artists we know that provide coaching or provide
Workshops.
Even the one guy provides editing for Adobe Audition. He provides editing classes, but it's specifically for those who want to get into voiceover. So you're not learning everything about Adobe Audition. You're learning what you need to know to be a good voiceover artist. So we just provide all of those resources at the end of the meeting. We get to know people personally, create a relationship, and then give them the information. And then we do keep in contact and to try to answer any questions we can along the way. But to reach out at the website and just fill out the form, and we would love to connect.
For sure.
Cool. Thank you both so much for coming and sharing all that you have. It's been such a fun, unique interview, and I've really loved getting to know you guys. I know our listeners probably have too. So thank you so, so much for the time that you spent.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Kirsten. We appreciate you having us on here. We're super excited and can't wait for it to come out.